all, welcome back to New Chapters. My name is Sarah, and if this is your first time joining me, I just want to say thank you for stopping by for this chapter of my life. I'm a hobby hopper, so if this isn't the content you usually watch me for, I hope you enjoy this hobby as well, and will stick around for today's video. Today we're going to be doing another WIP&Chat. WIP, W-I-P, just stands for work in progress. As of right now, I am still working on the Winter Girl kit from Enabler's Outpost. I know this kit has been discontinued, but I'll make sure to leave a link to the Enablers Outpost website down in the description box so you can check out what they do have available now. For today's video, I have a little bit of an update. I changed out my diamond painting pen, so I'm still using a pen from Diamond Art Club, but I am using this blue one instead of that red one. I think the red one's called Cherry Pie. I can't remember what the name of this one is. If I remember, I'll try to find the name of it and I'll leave a little box with the name on the video. But since I have a new one, this means I now have both sides of my diamond painting pen that I can use instead of my broken one. So I still have the steel single placer tip from Diamond Art Club in this side, as well as a new glue dot. I did have to use still the washi tape to kind of get it to stay in place there without it popping out of the pen. But I do have this single placer side that comes with the pens in it again as well. So you'll probably see me flipping this around a lot because I will probably flip to use this side of the pen to kind of reposition the drills as I see fit. But I have this diamond painting pen, and then as per usual, I still have my Dreamer Designs tweezer that I will be using if I need to move anything around. And then I have my Firefly Diamond Art tray here. It's hard for it to focus on that white lettering there, but that's okay. So this is the tray. I believe it's their Element tray. So it has this multi-placing grid as well as the standard just lines. And then what I'm going to be using today is their single placing grid that just separates all the drills out into individual drills, which in my opinion just makes them a little bit easier to pick out of the tray. So I believe that is all of the tools I will be using today. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. So first things first, as per usual, how are you guys doing? What's going on in your lives? Any updates, any changes, any big events, little events, any of those things? Let me know about them in the comments down below. I would love to hear about your guys' weeks and just kind of how things are going for you too. Help each other know that nobody's alone, whether it's good or bad that we're going through, that everybody's got those ups and downs. And we can kind of offer each other some support in the comments, hopefully. But yeah, I don't have a lot on my notes for this week, so we'll see how long this video lasts. But the biggest thing for this week that's an update for me is that I'm officially done with my training at work. So for those of you who haven't seen my other videos, when I started this YouTube channel, I was unemployed. I was unemployed for about 3 months before I got my new job, which is just as a worker in a youth psychiatric facility. So my role is to kind of just help the kids with their after school routines, making sure they're sticking to, a bedtime routine and kind of getting dinner and interacting with each other appropriately and interacting with themselves appropriately and all that kind of stuff. It's primarily helping kids learn coping skills. So when they're getting frustrated, what's an appropriate way to deal with that frustration versus maybe inappropriate things they've done in the past, hitting people or screaming or yelling or cursing or whatever it might be. The whole position is kind of designed to just help people understand the importance of developing schedules and routines, sticking to those, and then developing coping skills when things aren't going quite the way that you want them to or you plan for them to, or any of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what the role is. I've officially ended the training for my job, and now, I shouldn't even say that. technically they've called it like training and pre-shadowing. So I will be starting my like actually in the residence training next week where I will be still training. I won't be like the person in charge of any of the zones yet, but I'll kind of be actually in the zones for my entire shift, learning how everything operates. They are 10-hour shifts. I'm on the evening shift, so I get to deal with the after school stuff, dinner, bedtime, all of that kind of stuff. Um, so it's surprisingly, I don't know, it's weird for me because I'm such an introvert. So, like, on the one hand, I'm like, it's a long day. But on the other hand, because of the time frame of the job, my night owl side is incredibly happy with how this has all been panning out because it's a lot easier for me to like stay awake and feel alert and feel ready for whatever my shift throws at me on this like it's like a noon to 10 p.m. shift. So it's really nice in that sense that like even when I get home, I'm not super tired. Like I mean that's like my natural state, right? Like when I was unemployed, like I would go to bed between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. and then I'd wake up between like 10 a.m. and noon. So like this is my kind of natural state. Like if I don't have responsibilities and obligations and other things going on, this is the time at which I would naturally be up and about and moving around. It is so much better for me, and it's so ridiculous to me how much of a difference it's made um, between like doing a normal 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 job, and then like comparing that to this, where I get to sleep in and like work on the schedule that my body naturally prefers. Like the 10-hour shifts are like nothing. Like it does not take any extra energy or anything out of me. And like again, I'm a very introverted person. So the fact that I'm running around for 10 hours straight, like barely a time for a bathroom break most days, and I'm still like I much prefer this to having to wake up at 6, 7, 8 a.m. even to get to work. Like it's pretty crazy to me how much of a difference it's made in my energy and like my ability to just kind of function and stay high functioning at work all of the time. It's also nice because like when I get to work, I'm not exhausted and like trying to fight staying awake for my first couple of hours at the job just because my body is like, we do not want to be up quite yet. So I don't know. It's been interesting. I've worked like an overnight graveyard shift job before, which was fine. I was able to develop a pretty regular, consistent routine. I did not try to like change up my sleep schedule on my days off. I just would wake up at like 10 p.m. or midnight every day, and then I would either go to work or just stay up all night long on my off days. So I was able to keep and maintain a consistent schedule, which I think helped. But that was still something that like it wasn't necessarily my natural state. It was just easy for me to accommodate that schedule. This is totally my natural, like where my body prefers to be at kind of sleep schedule and sleep cycle. So I don't know. I've really been enjoying it. I've always assumed that this sort of shift would be my preferred shift, but I mean, I haven't had an opportunity to test it out until now. So it's nice to be able to confirm that this is really probably ideally the shift I would like to stay on for forever, truthfully, if I could. Um, but the problem is, I just don't know if this is the job that I can stay at for forever. As I said, I know I haven't really done a lot yet in terms of actually being the one like in charge of a zone and like being the sole responsible person for the kiddos that are under my care, but I just don't foresee this being something that truthfully I'm that interested in long term. It's just a lot of pressure. Like there's a lot of responsibility as there should be for like people who are in charge of kids who aren't I mean there should be pressure for parents too, but like especially when they're kids that aren't your own and like parents are entrusting you to keep their kids safe. There absolutely should be a high standard of responsibility in that sort of environment. Um, but my anxiety is like through the roof with all of the like pressure of the responsibility that's been kind of outlined for me in training for this position. and it just doesn't quite feel like where I want to be putting my time and energy into. The other side of it is like when I've worked with populations before that are dealing with like mental health stuff or with coping skills and all of that. I've primarily worked with kids, but when I was working with adults, even though that wasn't like the primary focus of anything necessarily, um, I mean, it was more just about like surviving life, period, in general, and like removing barriers to things that were causing people to turn to some, you know, substances or things that were having negative impacts on their life. Um, which is still, I mean, it's a pretty similar thing. Like you're learning new coping skills. It's a different level of learning new coping skills, and the onus is much more on the adults who are trying to make the change than like me as the person just trying to be supportive of helping them make that change and like provide them information for resources and all of that. So it's definitely a different level of responsibility on my part. And again, I think that's the way it should be for this role, but it is really causing me to be a lot more anxious about going to work and engaging with the kids than I ideally like. And so I think I'm going to try to get back into kind of more or less what I was doing before. Something that's like, jail programs, probation, something corrections, but with adults specifically. The other side of this too is like, I truly fully believe that like if somebody wants to make a change, if there's a behavior or something that's going on in their life that like they don't like or they want to um, change in some capacity. The word that came to mind was like correct, but it kind of depends on your perspective on what the correct thing to do is, right? So if somebody's wanting to change their behaviors, I fully believe that anyone's capable of changing. And I think it's a little ridiculous that we as a society go like, oh, if you're a kid, like you totally can change, like you have every right to change, like we'll help you change, no worries, don't like it's not your fault. We'll help you through this. But then with adults, it's like you turn 18 and we're like, oh, well, you should be responsible for yourself now, and you are responsible for yourself now, and it doesn't matter that you were never taught any better, you don't know any different. Like as an adult, now it's your job to just magically be responsible for being a better person, for having better coping skills, for having better, healthy relationship skills, for not turning to substances or other coping skills that have a negative impact on yourself or others. Like, we kind of just expect adults to magically become better people when they turn 18. Um, but, like, if you've never been taught those things as a kid, why do we expect that all of a sudden you're just magically going to be better and have those skills as an adult? Like, I do think there are sometimes people out there who are deliberately choosing not to learn skills or don't want to change, and those people aren't going to change because you can't force somebody to change. But if you give people the tools as adults, they are just as capable of changing as kids are. The difficulty is, as kids, your only job is to learn those behaviors and those coping skills and those techniques, um, along with like going to school and perhaps going to work, depending on how old you are. But like as an adult, there is so much more pressure on like just day to day things, and like mental health right now is so horrible for almost everybody in our country. Like, I don't know, it's hard for me to understand people who refuse to accept that like you have to provide even more support to an adult that you want to change, because I mean life is kind of sucky for everybody. And so, like, you can't just expect an adult to be better because they're an adult and they should know better and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, sure, maybe in an ideal world where, like, nobody is fighting for food every day, where people aren't trying to just simply survive and resorting to whatever coping skills they have, because as a kid, that's what they learned would keep them safe or protect them, or even as an adult were in situations where like they had to resort to some sort of survival instinct that kept them safe regardless of how anybody else felt about it. So I don't know. It's just because I feel like adults can change. Sometimes I struggle with like being in a job where the clients are kids because everybody wants to help kids. Everybody thinks kids can change, everybody thinks kids can get better, but not everybody feels like adults have that ability to change too. So it makes me always feel like that's the client population that I need to be helping versus kids, because there's a lot less people out there who see adults as people who can change successfully with the right sort of support. So that's kind of where I've been at with the job right now, which is a lot of thoughts. I can probably get off my soapbox now. I definitely can go on tangents about all of this stuff related to adults and people in general in corrections and trying to make changes in their life and whatever. And it's hard too because like we oftentimes use examples of like weight loss or something like that. Like if you as a very pro-social, like doing everything you're supposed to be doing that society says you're supposed to be doing kind of a person, like even you changing is incredibly difficult. Like you have to be very motivated, you have to have support, you have to have internal and external factors occasionally to be helping push you towards a goal. So like somebody who's trying to cut out soda or lose weight generally or whatever, like it takes a lot for us to change as people, period, let alone when you're dealing with something that's an addiction or something that like you should change but you don't want to change. Typically that's called like pre-contemplation. um Things like that. Like so it's hard sometimes because we fall into this cycle of like you should just change or like this is so bad for you. But like even if somebody knows something's bad for you, that doesn't mean that, like for me personally, doesn't mean I'm going to stop drinking soda every day. Because currently it hasn't gotten to the point that it's such a problem in my life that I have decided that I need to cut back or stop drinking regular soda and start drinking diet soda or anything like that. Like it's hard for the quote unquote normal person to change. And it's even harder for somebody who's struggling with, again, just like surviving on a day to day basis. Um, so, yeah, again, definitely a soapbox topic for me. I could talk about this forever and ramble on, which also goes back to why I'm like, I don't know that the job I have right now is the job that's for me long term, because I mean, I have told some of my coworkers, like, I already feel like I'm bonding with the kids just in the few days that I've been doing like observations, but like, it's not where my passion lies. It's not where my heart lies, is in helping these kids, because again, I just feel like everybody would help these kids. It's not something that is questionable. It's just something that's very natural for people, at least in our society, to want to help these kids. So if I have a passion that lies somewhere else, that's where I feel like I really should be trying to get back into that field in particular. The problem, of course, with that field is it's government work and everything's like 8 to 5 jobs, which then goes back on the whole I'm really enjoying this whole noon to 10 p.m. schedule that I've got going on. Um, that's just much better for my body naturally to be operating on. But all this being said, I believe it was this week that I did this. I ended up texting one of my old coworkers at probation, who's now, she's not the supervisor, but they've created like a step between the officers and the supervisors, I guess, at our old facility. And so I texted her and said, "Hey, I know you guys just hired some new people, but if you guys decide to hire anybody else, please let me know that there's job openings." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, absolutely. I will be texting you, I promise." So I did reach out to some people to maybe keep me in the loop on some probation openings back up at my old job. But it might be a while before anything like that opens. I know they're trying to just create some new positions, period, there, but it'll probably be 6 to 12 months at least before anything opens up from that. So the only other way position would open up is if more people leave or quit or retire or whatever. And I don't know if anybody is intending to do that in the immediate future, but definitely something that I'm keeping my eye out for and kind of trying to keep my ear to the ground on because, again, I just think that's more the kind of position that I want to be in. Plus, as I mentioned in my last WIP&Chat, like with the training that I've been doing and stuff, it's put a new perspective on probation and corrections in general for me, and specifically like how I've interacted with my clients before and kind of how I've approached setting goals and things for probation. And I think that it would just, at this point, I think I'd be an even better corrections officer just having, or not corrections officer, probation officer, having more experience in corrections, and just honestly better training than I had when I first started with probation. Um, and also just being a little bit older now and a little bit not as like worried about like, am I doing the right thing or do I know how this works? Like I've had enough time and experience now that like I can speak up, whether that's against my client who's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, or even against like my supervisors or my coworkers. If I'm like, no, that's not really the right way to be going about this situation, I can kind of advocate for my clients better now too. Um, so I don't know. I'm sure it's one of those the grass is always greener situations where I'm like, well, I don't really love what I'm doing now. And, looking back, man, that was really a great position. And like, I, could do so much more effective and better work that I care about in that position, now that I'm not there anymore. And I'm daydreaming about like how to implement new tools or different perspectives and stuff that I've thought about. Like, oh, how could I make it so that I could implement this sort of technique in a probation setting or all of that kind of stuff. So I've definitely been happily daydreaming about how to be better at my old job, but that's not the job I currently have. So it's been kind of a weird, I don't know, fantasy more or less of like how to be a better probation officer, even though I'm not currently a probation officer. But we'll see. We'll see how it all pans out. As I said, I know I would not be unwelcomed at my old job. I mean, even when I left, I was told by my direct supervisor, like, if you ever decide to come back, like, there's always a spot here for you. So I hope that ends up holding true. Um, especially since I'd be driving a little bit further now. I've moved since I used to work there, so it would give me the ability to have some of the flexibility that I've been enjoying about this current position, at least previously they had. So that's kind of what I was talking about with like the benefits. Like as long as I can still work like 410s and have a little bit of flexibility in my start time and all of that kind of stuff, I think it would be ideal going back there. But I won't know any of that until a position opens up and then interviewing and all of that. So will still be a while before anything changes on that front. But speaking of anxiety, so this past week there were some storms that came through the Midwest in the US that unfortunately produced some tornadoes. And I was in an area where tornadoes were not close to me at any point in time, but it was close enough that some of the like local news stations were doing tornado coverage. Again, luckily everything, for me at least, dissipated by the time it hit my city, but it started perking up and getting like ramping up, and there were like confirmed tornadoes on the ground near my mom and stepdad's house. Or their town, I guess I should say, not necessarily their house. But it was just, my partner works in emergency management. So part of his job is to like be the person who's looking out for tornado things and keeping up with weather when it's his week to be like on duty. And he happened to be the duty officer that week. So he's also, they do like the sirens and stuff like that. For the area that he works for. So he was, at work all night long. In fact, had to stay overnight, kind of unexpectedly, to just make sure that nothing else happened, since there had been tornadoes produced earlier in the storm system. They kept like the watches and stuff up for our area well into the early morning hours of the next day, so he had to stay for like, I think he had like a 20-hour work shift that day, just to make sure that if anything else happened, somebody was there to immediately trigger the warning system and all of that stuff. But anyway, he's watching these storms develop, and I mean, he's not really getting anything necessarily faster, but he's perhaps, a little more fluent at reading the charts and things than like your everyday average person. So he's like texting me and was like, hey, call your mom right now, tell her that they need to take shelter. There's a tornado on the ground heading towards their town. And so I had just gotten a warning alert myself, because I have like warning alerts set up for, where my mom lives and my brother lives and where my grandparents live and where I live and where I work and all of these sorts of like warning areas, so that if anything were to happen, I would kind of have my ear to the ground and could turn on like tornado coverage for whatever city I needed to be monitoring, just to make sure everybody was okay. And so I just texted her and said, hey, be careful. Looks like there's storms heading or like tornadoes in your area or headed your way. And so when my partner texted me and was like, hey, call your mom right now and tell her there's a tornado on the ground moving towards them, they need to take cover. So I was like, okay. So I called her. And I've learned this week that I definitely have some storm anxiety, and it certainly stems from my mother and her response to storms. So, like, I get sometimes people are really over-prepared, and, like, not that you can ever really be over-prepared, let's be honest, but, like, some people get really anxious about tornadoes and that sort of severe weather, understandably so, I think. But, I don't take tornado watches as seriously as I should. I don't have, like, cases of water and non-perishable food items and, like, stuff like that in my tornado shelter. And I will say my storm anxiety got worse when I first moved out of my parents' house, because growing up we had a basement. So I knew that if there was a tornado, I would go to the basement and I would be totally fine. Like, that was my place. But then when I moved out, I was living in like apartment buildings and oftentimes was like on the top floor of an apartment building. So was definitely not in a like tornado safe area. And like technically I think you can, find a place in a building like that, but it always made me more anxious because I didn't feel like I could just go run into the closet in the basement. Like I didn't have a guaranteed known place to go, which I should have. I should have developed a tornado plan, but I never did. But at our current unit, we live on the first floor. We've got like a interior stair closet that is a great like kind of built-in tornado shelter for our location. So I knew this time, like, hey, I don't have to worry about where I'm going. Like, I can just kind of pack up my bag tonight and like have it ready to go in case I need it. But again, truthfully, I don't like pack stuff up unless there's tornadoes already being produced earlier on in the storm. So like I didn't have anything prepped to go until all of a sudden I was getting tornado warning alerts for my mom and stepdad's house. And I was like, all right, time to pack up a bag just in case I need to take shelter in a couple hours when the storm moves through. But like, I don't have something that's just ready to go prepared in case there was actually a storm. I would still be fairly unprepared, to be honest with you. But anyway, I call my mom and tell her, hey, you need to take shelter now. And she was like, oh, we're watching the news. It's like a town over. Like, it's not here. We don't need to worry about it. And I was like, Mom, I'm calling you because, like, the person who knows the most about storms in our family is telling me there's, like, a strong, dangerous tornado moving towards you right now on the ground. I get that you're watching the news and it's like, oh, it's a town over. But, like, if you're in it, she's like, oh yeah, we're hearing the tornado sirens. And I'm like, Mom, if you're hearing the tornado sirens, that means you should be taking cover, regardless of if it's in your town or a town over or whatever. Like, the warning is so that you have the knowledge that something is imminently approaching you, and you should be taking cover, even if it's not quite there yet. Like, you don't want to be waiting until it's there to go get in your shelter. So I was more anxious about it than she was. And of course, the tornado, everybody's fine. They didn't have any reports even of damage. They did have reports of the tornado touching down on the ground that was by their house, but there ended up being no reports of damage at all from anybody. There wasn't any structure damage. I think there were some downed trees, but there was also just heavy wind, so nobody could really say for sure whether it was from like wind gusts or from the tornado on the ground itself. But like, my mom was all like, see, there wasn't even anything that happened. And I was like, that's not the point of all of this. Like, even when they give you tornado warnings, it's because it's potentially on the ground, yes, but it could also just be radar indicated. So, like, there could be radar showing rotation in the clouds, but the reason that they still triggered the tornado warnings is because at any moment that storm could drop. And that doesn't mean that it's going to. That doesn't even necessarily mean that it's likely to. It just means that there's a possibility of it happening. And there were so many people that I saw online, like, talking about tornado stuff after the storms rolled through, because there was stuff over the course of a couple of days and some deadlier tornadoes that did occur within this storm system. But, like, it really was annoying me that everyone was like, oh yeah, like, you don't have to take cover on a tornado warning, and like, tornado warnings hardly ever actually produce tornadoes. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the purpose of them. Like, tornado warnings are designed to be preventative, not to be like, there's a tornado on your house, take cover right now. Like, I don't know. It annoyed me that there was so many people, including my own mother, who were like, it's not a big deal, tornadoes don't actually hit my house. And I'm like, okay, whatever you got to tell yourself, I guess. But like, growing up, like, my mom was, and honestly still is, that person who's like standing out on the driveway watching the tornado and the funnel cloud and all of that just roll through town. So again, definitely some tornado anxiety produced in childhood, and it got worse for a while because, again, I didn't have like a dedicated shelter, so I was definitely more anxious about storms rolling through because I didn't know where I was going to go if something happened. So it's back down a little bit now, but certainly annoyed at my mother and the other people in the world who were like, tornado warnings mean nothing. It's like, no, they mean you should be taking shelter now for your safety. And again, we should be glad that tornadoes aren't touching down more often, but I don't know about you all. I don't want to take that chance of saying, oh, it's fine, tornadoes never actually touch down here, like, we're good. Even though I can hear the sirens and the news is telling me that there's rotation happening right over my house, it's fine. But I talked last week about the fact that my brother and I scheduled a call for this past weekend. Or not this past weekend. Last weekend we scheduled a call for this weekend. There we go. And so him and I talked for a couple of hours, which is kind of our MO for our conversations. We don't talk for a couple of months, and then we'll chat for like, I don't know, 2 to 4 hours, depending on the day. So we talked for just under 3 hours, and we talked about this, and he was pretty in agreement with me. He's like, they had some severe storms a week or two before, and they had, tornado warnings happening, and he just recently, after Christmas, he became a store owner for the company that he works for, and he was kind of panicking because he's like, I don't know what we're supposed to do if there's a tornado, but it's coming right for us. And so he had been a little bit anxious, and he felt bad because he said he'd had some co-workers, or I guess employees technically, who typically weren't scheduled on that particular shift, but he was trying to train them on some stuff, and so they were there on a day they weren't normally there, and then the tornado sirens are going off, and like their family's calling and texting and like making sure they're okay and they have a safe place to go to and all of that. And so my brother's kind of panicking a little bit, like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do to help you guys. He's like, but I kind of feel like I can't let you leave now that the tornado sirens are going off. Like, that's probably not a good idea. Like, that's not my advice that I'd be giving you if you're asking if you can leave or should leave. You probably should stay here, but I'm not sure that our building is necessarily the safest building to protect against a tornado either. So he was just talking to me about feeling kind of the same way, where, he feels like our mom doesn't necessarily take it as seriously as she probably should. And again, there is definitely a difference between getting anxious and panicking to the point of not being able to function anymore. That's not necessarily helpful either, but also just being of the mind that nothing bad's gonna happen here. I don't need to be concerned about the sirens. As long as I don't see a tornado, I'm fine. So yeah, that was definitely an interesting situation this week. And then outside of storm news, the only other thing really that happened this week was I told you guys that my partner and I had our anniversary that we went and celebrated. I believe that was last weekend. And we bought some board games. And so he was really tired this weekend because, again, he had stayed up all night one night this week at work. So he was still kind of catching up on sleep and whatever. So he was very, very tired, but he obliged me. We had talked about playing some board games this weekend, and we probably should have just played the one game and not played the second game that we played because he was so tired. He was, misunderstanding parts of the game because we were also playing a new game, so we had never played it before. And so he was like, at the very end of the game, he's like, I didn't know that's how that thing worked. And I was like, I literally, we talked about the instructions, and then I told you at one point in the game, this is how this works. Are you sure that's what you want to do? And he was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And I was like, okay, well, you get to just keep this game piece now forever. You're not getting rid of it. And he's like, no, that's not what I want to do. And I was like, okay. And then at the end of the game, he's like, that's not what, I didn't know that's how that worked. And I was like, I tried to tell you, I'm sorry you didn't understand that. but we had a really fun time playing the games anyway. But we really enjoyed one of the games that I bought specifically was called Sweet Mess. And that was the game that we played that he was like, again, just too tired to really fully understand what was happening. But we had a great time playing, and we both really enjoyed it. He told me afterwards, too, he's like, I was really tired, but he's like, I still really enjoyed that game. So highly recommend to anybody who likes to play games, board games. It kind of, I'm trying to think of what else it's like. Like, it's almost the tiniest bit like Catan, but it's kind of like Wingspan, if you've ever played that game before. Primarily with like the way that you have multiple like actions each turn, that are like dictated by whatever move you make. Like you can decide which one you want to take, but you have choices in the actions, and then some like just general actions that you can take each turn too. So it was really fun, and I really like baking and stuff, so it's fun to have like a baking based board game. It is a lot to kind of read. I highly recommend like watching a YouTube video about how to play the game. And actually, if I remember, maybe I will try to link to the video in particular that we watched about how to play Sweet Mess, because it was really helpful. That's how we kind of typically play new board games. Like we'll sort of skim through the instructions and stuff. We'll kind of try to just read them on our own, but most board games we play, we just look up on YouTube, like, how to play whatever the game is, and watch a YouTube tutorial, basically. Or not necessarily a tutorial of how to play, but of gameplay, but we'll watch, like, how to play videos. We don't necessarily watch other people play the game, but we'll kind of see the setup and have them explain the rules and stuff. Sometimes it's just easier to understand if you're watching it happen and listening to it versus just trying to read out of the rule book. So that was what we ended up doing. The other game we played was another game that I had picked out that is called My Shelfie, which, to be honest, was kind of like Connect Four, except you're playing, like, you're trying to meet certain objectives on like your own personal card or on like the group goals, and you're kind of playing with your own Connect Four-ish board. At least that's the way it kind of functions. So that was fun, but it was definitely a lot more simple and basic. Like, it was a fine game. We'll probably play it again, but it's more of like a palate cleanser. It's not really like all right, we're going to do a hardcore dedicated board game night. Like, that's more one of those games you throw in to play for 20 minutes between some of the more thought-inducing games, in my opinion. Or if you've got, like, kids and stuff, I'm sure they would love it. It would be pretty simple for them to play. But, yeah, so those were kind of the games we played. So we've played 2 now of our 6 games. Now, for those of you who've been watching my other videos, unfortunately, we did not actually unpack anything or, like, set up our game room. We just cleared off my desk in my office, and my partner pulled his office chair in here, and we just played on my desk. So we have not unpacked anything more. We did not do anything better in regards to that. We just played on my desk. But eventually, someday, we plan to, actually unpack all of our stuff and get our living room area set up where we're going to have like a board game space and our table and stuff like that set up. But I am almost done with this section, but that was the last thing I had to talk to you guys about. I don't really have anything diamond painting related. Trying to think if there's anything that I've become aware of that's come up. Actually, you know what? I do think, I don't think I've talked about this, but I did see that Craftably is closing their doors. I don't know when they're closing. And to be honest with you, I haven't actually done any Craftably kits before. I have a couple of Craftably kits, but I haven't completed them. Oh, man. My glue dot doesn't want to cooperate for my last little bit here. But yeah, I saw that they had announced that they are closing down their shop, which is sad. I know that a lot of, especially people on YouTube and stuff, talk about how much they love their kits, so I did, even though I'm, should definitely not be buying any more kits right now. I did go ahead and get on their website, and I did purchase a couple of their kits that I had seen previously from other people and stuff that I really liked, and was like, if they're going to go out of business, I want to make sure that I can snag a couple of kits then that I like before I can't get them anymore, or before, unfortunately, they probably go up in price if people are selling them other places. So I grabbed a couple of kits from them. I'm trying to remember what they were. There's one that was like, had some flowers and some butterflies, like some swallowtails, I think, on it. And then there was a really cool lighthouse kit. My mom really likes lighthouses, so that's actually the other Craftably kit that I do have, or one of the other kits that I have is a lighthouse kit with a girl on it, and I had bought that because my intention was to do that diamond painting, and then give it to my mom as a present because she really likes lighthouses. So I was like, well, here's another lighthouse kit, and I really like this one, and I was like, I want to make sure I can grab this while it's available. So I went ahead and did. But my mom is my stepsister, actually. I didn't know that she diamond painted as well. We hadn't really talked about it, but she had given my mom a like flower diamond painting a couple of years ago for Christmas. And my mom was like, I really like it, but like I can't hang it up anywhere. They live in like a really old stone farmhouse. And so you can't like drill into the wall really and like hang stuff up. So she was like, I like it, but like I don't really have a place to put it. And so she was like, it was a nice gesture, but like it kind of just hangs out on our floor, propped up against the wall. So until they move into a different kind of a house, which is their ultimate goal at some point in time, I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to actually do this diamond painting for you then and gift it to you, because I know you'd appreciate it, but like you also don't have a place for it, and I don't want to just add more clutter to what she constantly is complaining about is, too small of a house. And I mean, she's not wrong. It's like 2 rooms basically for 3 people who were living there, 4 people when she first moved in. And so I was like, well, I'll just keep these kits then, and I'll do them at some point eventually when I know that she actually has a place for them to live in her house. So now I have 2 lighthouse kits to do for her at some point in time. But yeah, so I got those 2 kits, and then I'm trying to remember, I think there was one, it was called like Cascading Colors, I think, that was like a colorful waterfall. And I'm a sucker for rainbow things, and I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and get this too. So I bought a couple of kits from Craftably there as they were getting ready to close up shop. I don't know if I saw a post about it somewhere, so I haven't actually seen like the Craftably's official announcement about it, but I'm not sure if they've announced like when they're actually closing their doors, or if they're just going to keep everything open until they run out of product and then they'll officially shut down and just aren't going to get more restocks. I'm not sure. But I know it's kind of been a up and down for everybody, because I know there were some people who were waiting for Craftably to like restock some kits and stuff, and they finally got restocked, and then they made this announcement that they were shutting down just after. So I know that threw some people off and definitely was a pretty sad day for everybody. But even though I said I had like nothing to talk about, I'm pretty sure I rambled on my high horse there for quite a while longer than normal this week. So that's going to be it. I did manage to finish this section, so we'll go ahead and call it a day. But thank you all for watching today's video. If you're looking for more content related to this chapter of my life, please check out my diamond painting playlist linked in the description box below. It should pop up in the cards as well, but if it doesn't, should be linked underneath the description box if you're watching it on YouTube. If you guys made it to the end of this video, I would love for you guys to leave an emoji just showing that you made it to the end of the video. We talked a lot about tornadoes tonight, so if you can find something that's related to weather or tornadoes, go ahead and leave that emoji down in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content about this chapter and others. and please leave any comments or questions you have down below. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.